don't know why I have the earphones in because I really don't need them. So hopefully this is working out okay to microphone wise. I'm clearly using my Bluetooth headset here, and live streaming from my phone is apparently the best solution that I've got. So I am technically away from Vancouver, but I figured might as well be able to finally continue on with this, which got quite delayed, clearly. So what I didn't know is that Volume 2 actually starts off with a continuation of Episode 7. So since it's been so long, and since I do not know how much power my let's see if we can read to the end. And if there's background noise, it's because I'm not home. I'm at my parents' house, my mother's house. So yeah, there's that. Either way, continuing on. Death Stranding, Volume 2, a novelized by Hitori Nojima, translated by Carley Radford, Episode 7, Dead Man. Continued. Once the winds calmed. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna just close my laptop here because it's boom making noise. Once the winds calmed, the force of the snow flurries finally weakened. The black clouds that hung in the air all around Sam, that had seemed close enough to touch, had dissipated, but the sun was still nowhere to be seen. It had been 4 days since Sam had left Mountain Knot City, and he had finally reached the highest peak in the mountain range. Despite the detour, he was relieved to discover that his path would indeed lead him over the summit. Yet once he reached the top of the peak that stood thousands of meters above sea level, he still found he could not see beyond the pale veil that covered the sky and obscured the world on the other side. It seemed impossible to him that a vast blue sky stretched out just beyond the clouds, slowly, slowly fading into the jet blackness of space. Sam remembered a conversation that he had with Bridget as a child. It was the one in which she told him all about their ancestors' expedition toward the western frontier, about how once they had reached the western frontier, they then carried on and aimed for the next frontier, space. Finally, once they had conquered the last physical frontier, they embarked upon a quest for the electronic frontier of networks and cyberspace. Listen, Sam, Bridget started. The Strand family all come from a single ancestor, who was among the first to reach America. Cultivating new places and building the infrastructure to give other people a future is in our blood. It was our ancestors who were the first to build a bridge to the island of Manhattan. That's why I want you to build bridges too. How naive Sam Strand had been back then, as he obediently nodded and promised her that he would. But the path to space was now closed, and the bridge they were now trying to build was to the world of the dead. Was that the new final frontier? The chiral network was an amalgam of a network and the world of the dead. The chiral network was an amalgam of a network and the world of the dead. Lochna had told him all about it. A member of Bridges, she was the younger twin sister of the theoretical physics expert Mama and the co-developer of Cupid. I don't think it's meaningless for the chiral network to access the world of the dead and bring back the past we lost and everything that went with it, Lochna had once explained. We need to reclaim the knowledge that the Death Stranding stole from us. But if that's all we do, then what are we doing but staring down memory lane? We run the risk of becoming bound by the past, just like Maligan and I were bound by our daughter. Mountain Knot City may be a knot on the chiral network, but that doesn't mean I want to go back to Bridges. I need some time to think, Lochna told Sam. Now that Lochna and Mama had managed to untangle themselves from the estrangement caused by the misunderstanding about their dead daughter, Lochna had new paths open to her. Sam wondered what kind of options he had now. He looked down at the empty void on his chest. Lou, the BB whose pod normally occupied the area, was with Deadman for repairs. All that was left was empty space. Even when the repairs were complete, the pod that would be returned to Sam would no longer contain Lou, but a blank BB with no memories. There had been no other choice. And now, on top of that, Sam found himself dwelling on Deadman's news about the shadier side of Bridges. What was he supposed to do about the fact that Bridget had carried on the BB experiments in secret? What about the past of Die Hardman, who served her? It seemed that, for now, the only option open to him was to pretend like he hadn't heard anything and carry on with his task of transporting goods and reconnecting the network as he went west in search of Amelia. That was why he had battled the winds and trapezed all the way up the sides of these snow-capped peaks. While Deadman was busy repairing Lou, Sam was to summit the mountains and head west from the direction of Mountain Knot City. Sorry, I'm just... Okay. The family place. While Deadman was busy repairing Lou, Sam was to summit the mountains and head west from the direction of Mountain Knot City to deliver some chiral allergy medication to the geologist's shelter. As the people stationed there continued to excavate the land, they had reported early symptoms of chiral contamination. Sam had dooms, so contamination didn't bother him too much. But for normal people, it could easily become deadly. Luckily, the symptoms that the geologist was experiencing appeared to be on the milder side, but they still needed dealing with fast. Sam Bridges. A codec call came through his cufflinks, and Sam jolted out of his thoughts. The tone was peculiar, in that it was restless and yet aloof. It's me, Hartman. Can you hear me? Even within Bridges, Hartman knew the most about the beach by far. But Sam had only ever been able to talk to him via wireless means or as a hologram. Sam, I heard that you're currently en route to visit some old acquaintances of mine. So if I'm not mistaken, that means that you'll be heading to my place soon after, right? I'm still not connected to the chiral network, but I do fall under the operational area of the network installed at Mountain Knot City, so I should be able to relay through the wireless and voice call with you even when you're high in the mountains. Of course, once the chiral network is connected, I'll be able to speak to you as a hologram too. Hartman was speaking at such a pace that Sam wondered if he was even closing his lips between sentences. My friends may be stationed out in the shelters, but all of them are experts in their own fields in the natural sciences. I don't know if you've been told this, Sam, but the area that you're heading to is very unusual. It's full of fossils from the late Cretaceous period. Now, that may not seem so strange since we know that dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago, but in reality, there isn't that much fossil evidence left behind that shows them living all the way to the end of that period. So, what we have under the soil there is a record of extinction. I've been told that the shelter that you're heading to now is the geologist's base. Now, he's made quite an interesting discovery. You may not be able to imagine this, and I've only heard about it, so I'm not even sure that I quite believe everything myself. But they say he's found a fossil beach. That's why he has started experiencing symptoms of chiral contamination. I'm sure he'll recover once you deliver him the medicine, but remember, he's not the only one involved in this research and investigation. There's a paleontologist digging up fossils of extinction. There's a paleontologist digging up fossils of extinct creatures, and an evolutionary biologist out there waiting for you too. Everyone is looking forward to your arrival and the activation of the chiral network. When they can recover the past research data that was lost in the Death Stranding and access the memories and records directly from the time of the extinction itself, I am too, for that matter. I completely read that wrong, but I'm going to continue on. Oh, Sam, I do hope you get here quickly. It was just as Hartman had described. The plan was to drop by their shelters and activate the chiral network for them. But first, he needed to deliver the medicine to the geologist. Once he had done all that, he would need to drop by Deadman's place to pick up Lou. Hartman may have been very talkative and extremely quick thinking, but he would have to wait. Sam, are you still there? I would love nothing more than to keep this conversation going, but I'm afraid my time is almost up. Sam wanted to point out that their call had been more like a monologue than a conversation, but before he could say anything, a robotic voice interjected with 1 minute remaining. Sorry about this, Sam. I need to borrow you so I can verify their discovery in detail. So please hurry up and get the chiral network up and running at their places and mine. You're not just connecting places and people here. Let's talk in more detail next time. See you, Sam. Hartman disconnected the call with the same urgency that he had originally rung with. The phrase, a fossil beach, echoed around Sam's head. He wondered if it had anything to do with the fossils that they were he wondered if it had anything to do with the fossils they were finding of the dinosaurs that had managed to cling on until the very end. He wondered what fossilization of the beach even meant. He couldn't even fathom it. But just like Hartman said, none of this was confirmed, so there was no point thinking about it yet. Sam stood, looked up at the sky, and readjusted his hood. The snow was beginning to fall again. Black clouds once more obscured the heavens. Something sounded like an animal howling in the Something sounded like an animal howling in the distance, but on further listening, Sam realized that it was the sound of the violently blustering wind. Gusts battered Sam, crying like countless invisible beasts, which threatened to topple him over. He braced himself against the land, but he couldn't withstand the weight of his cargo and fell backward. Okay, hold on. There's just something I quickly want to check. Okay. Also, quick. The violent beast-like wind rushed over Sam as he became buried in snow. The flurry swirled and groaned and blocked out his vision. As he struggled back to his feet, cursing, the wind knocked him back down. Standing had become impossible. There was nowhere to shelter from the wind on this blizzard-battered mountain peak. Sam grabbed the climbing anchor out of his backpack and thrust it into the bedrock beneath the snow. He tied the strand around his waist and secured himself to the other end. All he could do was lie face down and wait for the winds to calm. He clung to the snowfield on his belly. If there was any space between himself and the ground, the wind would get in and blow him away. He wondered just how far his body would be carried in weather like this. Would it be just like when he was taken by the supercell before? Sam could feel his body heat draining away as he was rendered immobile. He couldn't stop the ringing sensation in his back teeth. The feeling of being cold had already disappeared, and now the only sensation running through Sam's body was pain. But that pain would eventually disappear too. Then it would be the end. He tried to muster all his strength into his limbs, but his fingers and toes only continued to grow more and more numb. The snow gradually concealed the outline of his body from the waist down, making it look as if his body was gradually dissolving away into particles. Just like a BT. That thought felt like part hallucination and part dream. It was a bad omen. He couldn't look inwards at a time like this. He had to look outwards. He had to bind both body and mind back to earth. After a while, Sam realized there was a rhythm to his wind. It didn't stop blowing, but there was a little bit of a calm after the more violent gusts. If he could predict when the calm would come, he might be able to move. If he stayed here, he was going to succumb to frostbite. The wind weakened. Sam gripped the strand that was tied to his waist with both hands and began to move forward as he kept his center of gravity low to the ground. Once he reached the summit, it was all downhill. He concentrated his strength into his hand, which gripped the strand. The feeling in his palms and fingertips was returning. Perhaps it was because of the change in terrain, but the wind seemed to be losing strength. The snow continued to come down in droves, and Sam still couldn't see anything, but he was sure that even at this pace, he was slowly making his way down the mountain. He kept telling himself that it was just a little farther. He didn't think about anything else. He just put one knee in front of the other like a machine. If he could just keep doing that, then he would escape this blizzard and make it back to the real world. Something suddenly made Sam nervous. He could hear a sound. It was like the groan of a BT. It was getting closer and louder. He could hear it from overhead, from the peak of the mountain he had just ascended. But it was no BT. It was only after something hit Sam hard, flinging him down the mountain like a rag doll, that he realized what it really was. It was a rockfall. He had barely avoided being hit head on, but had still been grazed by the falling rocks. The earth and sky switched places over and over, and Sam was plunging through the black clouds. One of his backpack straps snapped and cargo was sucked into the sky. He was completely disorientated, all because of some stupid rockfall. Sam was tumbling all the way down the snow-covered slope. He was groping for something, anything to grab onto to stop his fall, but there was nothing. It felt like his ka had disappeared from his ha, just like it did at the seam. Even though he felt like he was falling through the sky, he could hear the sounds of waves. A baby was crying. It was calling out for Sam. A wave had rolled onto the shore and was trying to drag the naked baby into the sea. Sam broke into a run and jumped into the water. Lou was still crying out for him. The waves tossed Sam around helplessly as he reached out his right arm and barely grasped onto the baby's umbilical cord. He used it to reel the baby in and take it safely into his arms. As he cradled it to his chest, he realized that the baby was Milligan and Lochna's daughter. But Sam didn't question it. A baby was a bond, both shackle and anchor. The baby gave meaning and direction to Sam's life, a bridge from a fixed start to its end, whenever that may be. Once he realized that, he broke down and wept. He couldn't see anything through the never-ending stream of tears. That's why he didn't notice the red suit approaching him in the distance. The baby cried out and tried to break free of Sam's embrace. It was a joyous cry from the heart that Sam had never heard before. "Mama," the baby cried. The woman in the red suit held out her slender arms and took the baby from Sam. Or rather, the baby escaped to her arms of its own volition. It was Amelia. Amelia's eyes were overflowing with tears, too. Tears that were black. As soon as her tears hit the baby nestled to her chest, it began to collapse in on itself, breaking down into countless minute particles. It was just like the way Sam's blood returned to the BTs to the other side. Amelia's tears returned the baby back to the place where it was meant to be. "Wait, stop. Give that kid back to me." Sam's voice didn't reach her. "Well, I am being held very far away in Edgenot City, aren't I?" Sam kept screaming in vain until his own shrieks woke him up. He was lying face up on the snowy slope, and it took him a moment to realize that he must have been out cold and having a nightmare. Recap? Sorry. I'm live streaming from my phone, so the chats just appear and disappear. I really need to take to water. Honestly, I don't remember what happened. I'm still very near in the beginning, so you didn't really miss much, honestly. But it's been so long since I read Volume 1 that even I'm a bit lost. This is a continuation of Episode 7, I will say. I don't know if actually, I might be able to get through this, but we will see. Okay, just wait. Oh my god. Edmonton is so dry, it's sucking all the moisture from my body. All right. Okay, I'm going to just start from the beginning of page 22 here. He was lying face up on the snowy slope, and it took him a moment to realize that he must have been out cold and having a nightmare. The winds had died down, the snow had stopped, and the clouds had disappeared. Sam propped himself up and wiped away his tears, but they were no longer tears of sadness. Sam's nostrils filled with a familiar odor. He was right in the middle of BT territory. He sensed a strong BT presence. It was so strong that the tears wouldn't stop flowing. He felt his body break out into goose pimples, and his muscles began to spasm and tremble. He broke into a fever. Then came the alternating chills and nausea. He felt like he could hear the breathing of the dead next to his ear, but without a BB, he shouldn't have been able to hear anything. A handprint appeared right beside him. It formed only one of a trail of black handprints across the pure white snow. The stench of the dead grew overpowering. Sam covered his mouth with his hands and curled up in an attempt to conceal his presence as much as possible, but the trembling didn't stop. Sam couldn't tell if he was trembling from the cold or the fear. The handprints around Sam multiplied, all different sizes and all going in different directions. Multiple BTs were searching for him. He was surrounded on this snowy mountainside. He felt like an offering being made to them in atonement for some past sin. What an ego. If Sam caused a void out here, he would be back. But the energy from that void out would reduce Mountain Knot City to nothingness, along with Deadman and Lochna and Lou. What kind of offering brought such a destruction and calamity to the world? Offerings were supposed to be given to maintain peace. Although Sam could identify the handprints and presence of the BTs, his heart was still tormented with speculation and suspicion. He never thought being unable to see them would frighten him this much. The empty area on his chest that was usually occupied by Lou felt heavier than ever. He grew lightheaded as his body begged for oxygen. He couldn't hold his breath any longer, but the handprints were still circling. Sam used his numb hand to remove the glove on his right. The tips of his fingers had turned dark and bruise-like. It was a sign of frostbite. He sank his teeth into his wrist, felt the warmth of his own blood spurt forth, and spread it thickly over his face. Even though it had been coursing through his own veins, it still smelled foul and only made him feel even more wretched. Still, he sensed the BTs flinch. The handprints stopped moving. Sam removed one side of the cufflink, exposing the cutter. It was the same cutter that had sliced through Mama's umbilical cord. Normally, a unit attached to a blood bag would be inserted into a broken blood vessel to maximize the amount of blood drawn. Sam felt a pain like his heart was exploding. Steam rose from the cutter as blood trickled out. Sam groped around for his backpack with his left hand and removed a hematic grenade. It was connected to a full blood pack. Sam had no idea how many BTs there were or where they were prowling. He closed his eyes. If he couldn't see them in the first place, then there was no point in looking. He prayed to his absent BB. "Protect me, Lou." He thought that he heard Lou's voice in response. Even if he was just hearing things, all he could do was believe in it. Sam threw the grenade, like a separate heart filled with his own blood, overhead toward the voice. There was a small explosion and blood rained back down on Sam. The blood hit the BTs, revealing the outlines of their bodies and where they were. They soon broke down into particles, but Sam knew that he would have to do more to get rid of them all. Sam stood and advanced forward, brandishing his blood-covered cufflinks like a whip. The BT shrunk back. Sam's vision began to spin until he could no longer tell what was up and what was down. Maybe it was because of all the blood he had lost that all the color began to drain out of Sam's world, turning it monochromatic. He kept moving forward as black blood scattered across the white snow. He was like a saint, parting tempestuous seas and walking between them toward the promised land. But there was no living people following in his footsteps behind him. By the time Sam was sure that he was out of BT territory, he no longer had the strength to stand. He barely had any energy left at all. He used the last of his strength to stem the bleeding from his wrist and stitch himself up with a medical stapler. He followed up by throwing some blood replacement supplements and smart drugs into his mouth and chewed. He even appreciated the cryptobiote that he had found in the bottom of his backpack. The cufflinks picked up a weak radio signal, telling him he was close to the geologist's shelter. Once he had descended the slope, it would be around 3 kilometers away. But at that very moment, that distance felt almost impossible. Sam found himself some exposed bedrock, thrust in a pile, and tied his strand around his waist. He descended the rest of the slope, depending on a literal lifeline. Okay. More tea. I have to say, that was the exciting part of the read-through. Okay. The geologist's shelter lay a distance away that Sam would normally have been able to cover on foot within 30 minutes. But he needed much more time than that now. Thankfully, oxygen levels had increased and the snow had stopped falling once he had descended down the mountainside. Since he took a break partway down, he found some of his strength had returned as well. The geologist was a British scientist, and even on the hologram, you could see how emaciated he had become. Emaciated? When Sam finally handed over the medicine he had brought, the geologist was overcome with joy and tears and could only thank Sam over and over again. "Thank you, Sam Bridges. I can't tell you how grateful I am. I was feeling giddy or getting majorly depressed over the smallest of things. I've never experienced anything like it. I thought that all these haywire emotions were because I was out here all alone at first, but it turned out that wasn't the case. It was because of chiral contamination. I always knew that it was a possibility, but I never thought it would actually happen to me. It was a sign that the chiral rays the chiralium was giving off were having effect on both my body and mental state. It presents very similarly. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, I can't say similarly. It presents very similarly to stress, so that's what I thought it was at first. At this rate, I probably would have started contemplating suicide, but thanks to you, I'm going to get better." Sam could see some slight effects of the chiral contamination in the speed and breathlessness in the geologist's speech. Sam wanted to tell the geologist to just hurry up and take the medicine, but he couldn't get a word in edgewise. It was approximately 3.8 billion years ago when life first emerged on this planet, and ever since then we have seen repeated mass extinction events of varying scales. Out of all of these events, the largest ones are known as the Big Five. They each occurred at the ends of the Ordovician period. Oh my god, there's a lot of science words happening here. Ordovician period, the Devonian period, the Permian period, the Triassic period, and the Cretaceous period, respectively, wiping out most of the life on the Earth's surface. But why does the phenomenon that eradicates all life on this planet occur in the first place? By what mechanism does it take place? And was the Death Stranding the sixth mass extinction event? I've been trying to get to the bottom of all these questions together with Hartman and my colleagues, but the only result that we've turned up so far is the discovery of a fossil beach. Do you understand what that means? When an earthquake occurs, frictional heat at the fault line forms a stratum called oh my god, pseudotichylite? Listen, there's a lot of science words here, so pseudo pseudotichylite? I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to pseudotichylite. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. When an earthquake occurs, frictional heat at the fault line forms a stratum called pseudotichylite. They're known as fossilized earthquakes, therefore making this a fossilized beach. We were looking at strata from the end of the Cretaceous period when we found this strange thing mixed in with dinosaurs and ammonite fossils. But it's not something that can be seen with the naked eye. The term fossil is more of a metaphor here. We detected the chiralium, and that chiralium is what first caused these symptoms. Speaking of chiralium, chiralium was only found after the Death Stranding occurred. It was brought here via the special dimension that we call the beach. Some of us think that it always existed somewhere, just like the Higgs particle and dark matter, and we just hadn't found it yet. This fossilized beach proves that. It also proves that this isn't the first time the beach has appeared on this planet. At the very least, there's a chance that it also appeared during the extinction event that took place at the end of the Cretaceous period. We haven't been able to accurately verify this yet, but we can assume that there is at least some kind of relationship between the occurrence of the beach and extinction events. By investigating the strata formed during other periods of extinction, we might find other fossilized beaches, meaning that the beach is involved in mass extinction events. Are you following me? Look, I don't really understand the beach. I know that is... Is this the same person talking? Okay, yes, same person talking, sorry. Look, I don't really understand the beach. I know that it is linked to the spirit of each person and that it can be used as paths on the chiral network. And I kind of get that it is something that can't be physically touched. But whenever I listen to the stories of people like you with dooms, it almost feels as if the place actually exists. That impression was correct. Sam knew that even he couldn't explain his experiences on the beach to other people. The words that people with dooms and people without dooms used to describe death were different. The way they imagined death was different. The syntax they used to describe the beach itself was different, a gap in perspective that Sam knew couldn't be bridged. The one thing that Sam had followed in the geologist's rambling was the likelihood that the Death Stranding was the sixth mass extinction event had increased dramatically. I read that wrong. The one thing that Sam had followed in the geologist's ramblings was that the likelihood that the Death Stranding was the sixth mass extinction event had increased dramatically. If the reward for finally solving the eternal mystery known as death was extinction, would everyone just roll over and accept that? Did death use the fate of extinction as a gag for those who found out its truth? Hopefully, we'll be able to further clarify the relationship between the beach and extinction. But that all hinges on you activating the chiral network for this area. Sam took up the Cupid in response to the geologist's remarks. He pressed it to the receptor fitted onto... Sorry. Just had a thought in my head and I started laughing. Sam just wants to get the job done. This guy won't stop talking. Sam took up the Cupid in response to the geologist's remarks. He pressed it to the receptor fitted onto the... sorry. Weird stuttering happening here. He pressed it to the receptor fitted onto the delivery terminal and activated the network. If the beach had been connected to all those past extinction events too, then didn't that mean that the chiral network, which used it as an intermediary, could have yet another use? Sam questioned as he replaced the Cupid inside the breast pocket of his suit. Immediately after Sam left the shelter, a call registered on Sam's cufflinks. It was Deadman. Thank you for waiting, Sam. There was no way that dead man could have known about all the crap that happened within the BT territory back there, but his cheery tone still annoyed Sam. I'm all done. I managed to reset the BB without any problems at all. Now all I have to do is test whether it still functions properly, whether the amounts of stressors it can withstand is up to spec, etc., etc. So, the new BB was complete, and Lou was gone. Maybe he should treat it as the new Lou. But just as parents could not replace their children, or other people could not replace lovers or friends, there was no replacement Lou. Hey, Sam, is that true? I'm going to take it out and test it. The Mountain Knot City staff are going to be helping, so there's no need to worry about me. This whole area is covered by the chiral network now, thanks to you, so we'll know where the BT is and we'll be able to predict the weather. We should even be able to detect the movements of those beasts to some extent. So, once you're finished with your job, all you need to do is come and pick up the BB back up. To pick the BB back up. Sam wanted nothing more than to punch the cufflink, but he couldn't cancel the call from his end. That made him even more annoyed. We're going to be testing out the BB in an area southeast of the geologist shelter. It's right next to the distribution center near Mountain Knot City. I know that you already went out west, and I'm sorry that I have to call you back this way. But at least you won't have to climb over the big mountain this time. With your legs, you should be able to make it in a day. Plus, once you've taken back the BB, you'll be able to rest up in a private room at the distro center. Sam felt Sam even felt annoyed at how Deadman was trying to make it sound like it was the most thoughtful suggestion ever. Sam was the one out here busting his ass, delivering the cargo and rebuilding America. What was he doing? Sam held back his tirade and simply switched the codec itself off. Then he proceeded down the gentle slope alone. It was getting colder now that Sam had entered the long shadow cast by the high peak, but after the extreme cold of the blizzard that he encountered before, this was nothing. Once he climbed the slope, he would be able to see Lou again. Or, rather, the BB previously known as Lou. Complicated feelings welled up inside him as he looked up at the ridge of the mountain. To put it bluntly, it hurt to think that even though he would be creating new memories with the BB, he would have to let go of the old ones. Once he had climbed the slope, he could see the distribution center in the distance. He was almost there. Sam, can you hear me? Watch out! That's Lochna's voice. Lochna's voice suddenly cried out from the codex transceiver on his cufflink. It's happening again. The chiral density is rising. Sam scanned his surroundings to try and figure out what she was talking about, but there was nothing unusual to be seen. The Cupid that Sam was using was the one that Lochna fixed. Had there been some kind of mistake? As Sam questioned himself, a vivid upside-down rainbow appeared in the southern sky. Even though it was an evil omen that signified a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the dead, it was undeniably beautiful. Sam must have seen it 100 times, so he was surprised by this feeling he was having. In reality, it was a terrible thing, but he was so captivated by it. He was feeling something that he couldn't put into words. He wasn't quite in awe of its beauty, nor was he fearful. It was something else entirely. Just as he found it impossible to describe his feelings, he couldn't stop his tears either. This wasn't his usual allergic reaction. For some reason, he was really moved. The transmission between Lochna cut out. Sam tried reaching her again, but no matter how many times he tried, no sound came from the receiver. No sound came from the transceiver. Even though he was in an area covered by the chiral network, he couldn't connect. All of this seemed to back up what Lochna had said about the sudden rise in chiral density. Or maybe something had happened back at Mountain Knot City. He felt a sudden warmth on his chest, and when he pulled out the Cupid, Its 6 shards were emitting so much heat it felt like they might burst into flames. What was happening? Sam tried to rip the cupid away from his neck, but the cupid began to float away as if it was a creature with a mind of its own. It floated off into the air as if it was taunting him. The second that Sam stepped forward, led on by the cupid, the scenery around him transformed in an instant. An unbelievable gale was blowing at Sam from behind. He lost his balance and almost fell forward. He tried to cover his head with both arms to brace for the impact, but it was useless. His body floated. Gravity was gone, and Sam was flailing through the air. Next to him, a huge whale was flying as its body rotated around like a drill. The debris of ship, the debris of buildings, ships, and cars of varying sizes that Sam had only ever seen in picture form, and faceless people that had appeared out of nowhere were swallowed up in a giant whirlwind and sucked into the sky. Okay, and that was the end of episode 7. So yeah, that was a bit of a shorter read, but my throat thanks for it. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I was wondering, because the chat would just pop up and disappear, but I need to turn on a different setting. Oh, you thought this? I mean, to be fair, if you didn't see this bottom part, this mug could look like some sort of beer, something for beer, but no, this is tea, which technically is not. Really, I should just be drinking water, but this is what I had on hand, and I made it, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to drink it because I need to finish off. But yes, okay. So hopefully I can continue. I've been trying to start this up for a long time again, but I either I get felt really tired or other things were getting in my way. And so of course when I'm away from home, I'm like, let's just try. So hopefully this is probably gonna be in terms of like the entire series because I'm live streaming from my phone. It's probably gonna be like the better looking video of all of them. I'm assuming hopefully the sound quality from my headphones here are adequate. Otherwise, but it sounded fine to me. It was really weird. Connecting this to my laptop, it sounds like shit. So I don't know what the difference is. It has to be something with the phone. Either way, I am going to end this particular. It sounds good? Sounds fine? Good to know. I don't know. Maybe it's just trying it from my phone from now on. I don't know. It's because it's reading. It's more the audio quality, video quality shouldn't matter, in my opinion. But who knows? But yes, hopefully next Friday I will be able to read episode 8 and maybe get through it. It's definitely longer than the continuation of episode 7. And then I think episode 9 I might need to split into 2 parts because that is a big boy chapter right there. Good. I don't know if you can tell. No, you definitely can't. Okay. But either way, hopefully I'll have this next Friday. Next Friday, not the Friday after. I know that. So either way, thank you for liking if you liked. Thank you for commenting if you commented. Thank you for subscribing if you subscribed. And thank you for simply clicking on this video. Cheers, tea. Until next time, guys. See ya. And I believe I just click this to end the thing. Yes. Okay, there we go.